begin our story of Florida's alien wildlife with Palm Beach, where the native sable, or cabbage palms, were long ago replaced by the coconut palm from Southeast Asia. It is the palm species with the greatest number of individuals on the planet. 100 years ago, Palm Beach looked much like this forest: cabbage palms, saw palmetto, and live oaks. Since the late 1800s, over 25,000 tropical plants from all over the world have been introduced to Florida. Most are harmless and were brought here for decorative purposes by resourceful landscapers. One of the most striking and beautiful examples of their efforts is the sculpture gardens at the Society of the Four Arts Museum in Palm Beach. These elegant gardens are home to many beautiful aliens from all around the world. Beautiful bougainvillea comes from Brazil, while the many varieties of hibiscus trace their ancestry to China. The lotus is from South America, and plumeria comes from Central America. Along with the human, the gardens also attract some smaller aliens, like the curly-tailed lizard from the Bahamas, that has become extremely abundant in urban areas. When these small lizards become agitated, they curl their tails like a scorpion. In this case, her head pump indicates a physical interest in a handsome male. Head bobbing and push-ups are common to many lizard courtships. Many garden visitors overlook the curly-tails, but the late afternoon sun doubles the eye-catching beauty of the ruffled fan palms and the giant elephant ears. Elephant ears are native to the Amazon rainforest and provide an ample platform for the Cuban tree frog, which has been here since the late 1800s. The tree-climbing night anoa is also from Cuba and is firmly established. The giant marine toad from South America has big poisonous glands behind its eyes. Bromeliads are common to the world's tropics, but the sausage tree comes only from tropical Africa. Philodendrons are found both in the Himalayas and the jungles of Brazil, as well as many places in between. A visit to these gardens is a walk through the world's tropics. Be sure not to miss the bottle palms from islands in the Indian Ocean. A short distance away is the Dreher Park Zoo in West Palm Beach. It's home to many non-natives, like the brilliant Caribbean flamingos. 80 miles south, you can find another flock of Caribbean flamingos at the Miami Metro Zoo. Like Dreher Park, they have a goodly population of freeloading wild white ibis. But along with them are a dozen or so sacred ibis from the Mediterranean. There are about 100 of these birds now living wild in southern Florida. The chief concern is that they'll compete for nesting sites with our native ibis and wood storks. They are not zoo residents, as evidenced by the fact that they can fly. Back at Dreher Park, we find ourselves in the company of the world's largest pheasant, the peacock. This native of India can be found throughout southern Florida. They are free to come and go from the zoo as they please. This is his display area, so the zoo staff salt his front porch to make him doubly enticing to the ladies. She seems to be ignoring him, but indeed, she's well aware of his presence. The zoo is also home to a robust population of green iguanas. They often arrive as clandestine late-night drop-offs by disillusioned pet owners. Iguanas are fun when they are small, but a 4-foot lizard is a real handful. The green iguana is principally arboreal and is found throughout Central and South America. His sharp claws serve him well in the trees. Big males can reach 5 feet. During the breeding season, they develop an orange color on their legs, dorsal crest, and dewlap beneath their chin. An aroused male will, like the curly-tail, bob his head and shake his orange dewlap to attract the smaller green female. The green iguana has become a common sight in southeast Florida, especially around ponds, lakes, and canals. In the tropics, they are often referred to as Caribbean chicken because they are raised commercially for their meat, eggs, and hides. He may look a bit slow and ponderous, but if pursued, he can run at a surprising speed. Green iguanas tend to stay close to water. It provides a second avenue of escape. They are excellent swimmers and will take to the water in an instant to avoid a predator. Another smaller iguanid, the basilisk from Central America, also stays close to water. Basilisks rarely exceed 10 inches in length and are named for a mythological dragon that was said to be able to kill with just a look. The Mexican spiny-tailed iguana has also established itself in some Miami neighborhoods. They can reach 4 feet and are very wary. This pair lives beneath the sidewalk, and it's obviously the mating season. Since these lizards are herbivores, the folks living here have chosen to just enjoy them. The male went foraging, so I thought I would lure her out with some colorful hibiscus blossoms. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist them. Flowers are like candy to an iguana. Another member of the colony has found itself caught out in the open. A feral house cat could be bad news. It's time to head for the palmettos. Now here's something the cat would be very interested in: a walking Claris catfish. These aliens from Thailand were released by irresponsible aquarium owners, and they are now spreading rapidly across southern Florida. They do this by walking from one body of water to the next. They usually walk at night when the grass is dewy and wet. They simply lock their pectoral fins straight out from their body and walk. The West African spotted tilapia is one of 34 species of alien fish that are now reproducing in South Florida waters. They are prolific breeders and produce up to 2,000 young per spawning. You can see young, known as fry, beneath the parent fish. There they are. Juvenile spotted tilapia have bars that fade to a row of spots. The two fish to the left are native sunfish. The North African blue tilapia is the fish commonly seen for sale in the supermarket. The Midas cichlids are from Nicaragua and Costa Rica, while the Oscar cichlid comes from the Amazon basin, as does the Plecostomus catfish. He's a shy nocturnal bottom feeder that prefers a shady lair during the day. In your aquarium, he will rarely get over 6 or 7 inches, but in the wild, he can reach 20 inches. Remember the walking catfish? In his element, he's a serious nocturnal predator. Small fish are his favorite food. All of these fish have been released by unthinking aquarium owners. One of the most troublesome introductions has been the snakehead from Africa. Because of the spot, he's sometimes called the bullseye snakehead. Snakeheads are a major threat to fish in any body of water that they inhabit. An aggressive personality is a common behavior trait among most successful aliens. This pair of jaguar guapotes are guarding their eggs and will quickly attack any fish that comes close to them, including a South American armored catfish. Years ago, these shallows would have been home to nesting sunfish. Today, they've been largely replaced by Mayan cichlids. These aggressive Central Americans have become common and dominant in South Florida waters. The young cichlids are of course fed on by our own native largemouth bass, but he couldn't do the job alone. So the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission decided to introduce a big predatory cichlid from Central America called the butterfly peacock cichlid. Because he tends to bed in shallow water, he doesn't pose a significant territorial threat to the largemouth. He's looking after hundreds of baby peacocks. The butterfly peacock is now southern Florida's most popular game fish. Mullet are native fish, but the plant beneath them is an undesirable alien called hydrilla. It's from Asia, and it smothers other aquatic plants. Another smotherer is an Amazonian who got here in 1884. It was given away as a door prize at horticultural shows. The water hyacinth flowers are truly eye-catching, but the free-floating mats shade everything beneath them. They also decrease the amount of oxygen in the water. Canals clogged with hyacinth are a common sight in South Florida. They can, if allowed, cover the entire surface of a lake. The sandhill crane is hunting for frogs and various insects that hide amongst the tuberous roots. Water lettuce is from Africa and, like the water hyacinth, can clog waterways. Here it's competing with hyacinth, and it seems to be winning. It's not uncommon to see two aliens struggling with each other to fill a niche. In northern Florida, we find an exotic pea vine from Japan that was introduced as a ground cover to stop soil erosion. It succeeded too well. It's called kudzu, and it covers everything, including telephone poles. Another climber and smotherer is Old World climbing fern from Africa and Asia. It's an aggressive vine that, like kudzu, will climb and smother. Here we see a tall native pine that's been smothered to death. Remember water lettuce and hyacinth competing for space in the canal? Well, here we have Old World climbing fern competing with Brazilian pepper, and the fern is winning. Brazilian pepper was introduced as an ornamental shrub in the 1800s. Birds carry its seed-laden berries over much of Florida, and it is today the most common shrub that lines Florida's southern highways. It's highly invasive and impossible to control. Another hard-to-control invasive is casuarina, or Australian pine. It's often used as a windbreak or hedge. Its long, wispy needles are very distinctive, and they cover the ground, smothering undergrowth. It grows fast and is considered a weed tree. Casuarina is invasive, but it's no match for our old friend the Old World climbing fern. Here we see the fern attacking and smothering a young casuarina. The pine is doomed. Another Australian import is Melaleuca. It was introduced to help dry up wetlands for development. It has a soft, punky bark that acts like a sponge for water absorption. Melaleuca has proven to be very effective at draining wetlands. It has now invaded the Everglades, and biologists are battling mightily to stop it. Strangely, Melaleuca does have one ardent fan, a small parrot from Argentina called the monk parakeet. They are the only parrot that builds a nest. The rest are cavity nesters. The small monk parakeet is now firmly established in 7 states. Here in Florida, there are over 100,000 of them. Orchard growers are not crazy about monks because they cut off the fruit-bearing branches for their big stick nests. They aren't too fussy about their nest sites. A telephone pole will do just fine. He's got a grip on that wire that would be the envy of any high-wire aerialist. Something's not quite right here. Ah, now that feels better. While he's out collecting, she's busy arranging. Everything has to be just so. The monk was first brought to the U.S. in the 1960s and was released or escaped quickly. Because it doesn't seem to negatively impact native birds, wildlife officials tend to ignore it. Like many other birds, they like to nest high to avoid predators. Occasionally, a chick that's not ready to fly will take a long, fatal tumble to the ground, where the native gray fox waits to pick up an easy meal. Another patient predator is the beautifully camouflaged boa constrictor from Central and South America. An injured fledgling would be an effortless meal for this resourceful 8-foot reptile. Releasing a big predator like this does great harm to the native wildlife. The European rock dove makes use of phone wires to remain high above the ground and out of harm's way. The white-winged dove is a Central American bird that's working its way north on its own. The red-whiskered bulbul, on the other hand, got lots of help from man. It's a native of India and Pakistan. It was released and has established a small colony around the intersection of Southwest 71st Avenue and Southwest 98th Street in suburban Miami. The red whiskers on the bulbul are not that easy to spot, but the blazing red of the Royal Poinciana is impossible to miss. This dazzling ornamental comes from Madagascar and is seen in many collections, including that of the Fairchild Botanical Gardens south of Miami. These tropical woodlands are home to several escapees from the pet trade. A brilliant red lory from the islands of Indonesia. Just a few feet from him is a closely related rainbow lory. In spite of their bright colors, lories are not great fans of light, especially the reflected light from my mirror. Curious, she ventures out to get a better look at the photographer. The red lory is house hunting. An abandoned woodpecker hole looks a bit promising. He's feeding her. That's usually a preliminary to mating and having a family. In Indonesia, they would ignore each other. But here, they are strangers in a foreign land. And, well, a stranger is just a friend you haven't met. His favorite food is the tree's newly emerging flower buds. They are rich in sugary nectar. Insects and insect larvae are also highly favored. It would appear that she likes their new home and is ready to move in. Woodpeckers, like the pileated, are indispensable to other cavity nesting birds. The red-bellied woodpeckers are extremely common. Another woodpecker cavity is being used by an adolescent screech owl who's wondering about the downstairs neighbor. It's a hill myna from India. This bird is now firmly established in Florida. Hill mynas are famous for their ability to mimic sounds. Their favorite foods are figs and other ripe fruits. The common mynas are also here and often seen around parking lots. The stub of another royal palm is home to a nesting chestnut-fronted macaw from Panama. This is a big bird. It's using an abandoned pileated woodpecker cavity. Several macaw species have been imported through the pet trade. The blue and yellow macaw is not yet established, but escapees often turn up in suburban backyards. They are truly stunning birds of the Amazon. The Amazon basin is also home to the scarlet macaw, the best known of all South American parrots. If you want attention, cloak yourself in scarlet. That's why they are often featured on travel brochures. At the opposite end of the look at me spectrum is the canary-winged parakeet, who blends well into his surroundings. This elegant little parrot is also from the Amazon. Canary wings feed on seeds, fruits, blossoms, nectar, and will even come to backyard feeders. The canary wings are very quiet compared to their cousins from down under. Route 19 in Newport Richey is where I stumbled onto hundreds of budgerigars, pet store parakeets. A street puddle has proven irresistible to them. The budgie is a tiny parrot from the deserts and scrublands of Australia. They are very social and usually seen in flocks. These birds are a product of many escapees reproducing over the years. Some are very social, while others are not. Wild budgies are yellow and green. Selective breeding has led to blue and yellow individuals. Budgies get along well with peaceful doves, but the European starling is aggressive and not to be trusted, so it's smart to keep your distance. Some budgies are genuine acrobats. They use their bill as a third hand, while others use it to feed their partner. In the wild, budgies feed on grass and weed seeds. Here in Newport Richey, some folks have set out specially designed feeders, fenced so starlings, grackles, and jays can't get in. One who can get in is the weaver finch from Europe. This finch, known as the house sparrow by many, has been here for over 100 years. Aliens welcome, natives stay out. The center of the Florida Peninsula has fewer aliens, but one it does have got here on its own. It's a small egret from Africa. It flew over to South America around 1900, then started working its way north. Today, the resourceful cattle egret is a common bird all over Florida. It gets its name from its habit of following a grazing animal, usually a cow, and watching for the grasshoppers, crickets, and other insects that it scares out of the grass. Like the budgie, this small egret is also very social. You rarely see just one bird by itself. Normally, they'll fly off to a herd of cattle, but more enterprising birds will head for the mowing machine. This thing beats a cow any day. Their biggest problem is just keeping up with it. There's a second self-introduced alien out here in these fields, the nine-banded armadillo. He walked here from South America. Armadillo means little fellow in armor. He's chiefly an anteater. Over on the Gulf Coast is another South American, but he didn't get here on his own. Furriers imported the 20-pound nutria, and hurricanes released it into Florida's marshlands. The nutria adapted well to our wetlands, too well. It's become a major pest that eats vegetation needed for native species, and it digs burrows in dikes, which weaken them. Occasionally, it's mistaken for the 2-pound muskrat, But the muskrat has a flat tail, the nutria's is round, and black whiskers. In Louisiana, where it was first introduced, they now have a bounty on this highly invasive rodent. One of the most familiar birds on the marsh is the common gallinule. In Europe, they call it the moorhen because it lives on the moors or marshes. Here in Florida, it's often found with a beautiful neighbor, the iridescent purple gallinule. Birders and nature enthusiasts go to great lengths to see this bird, as it forages for insects, seeds, spiders, snails, and fish. The purple gallinule is a member of the rail family and is about the size of a pigeon. In some areas, the purple gallinule is now competing with a look-alike chicken-sized invader from southern Europe and Asia. It's called the purple swamp hen. It escaped from private collections and is now a serious problem. Nearly 2,000 swamp hens have been shot by wildlife officials in an attempt to eradicate them. Those that remain are very shy. Purple swamp hens have enormous feet for walking on lily pads or soft mud bottoms. Their hind toe also functions as an opposable thumb for holding food. The water's edge is where many predators go to search for prey. In recent years, South Florida, especially the Everglades, has seen a population explosion of a beautiful but deadly constrictor from the Far East. It's a subspecies of the Asiatic rock python, the Burmese python. These giant snakes can grow to 18 feet and weigh 200 pounds. They are a triple threat. They can pursue prey in the water, on land, and in the trees. The only thing they can't do is fly. But even birds have to land, and here they are vulnerable to the snake. The little green heron has a nest nearby. If the python caught wind of the nestlings, there is little the heron could do to save her young. In fact, these snakes have been known to attack 8-foot alligators. A snake this size would have little to fear in the wild. In 2007, National Park Service employees removed 250 Burmese pythons from Everglades National Park. A female Burmese python can produce 25 to 80 young per year, so eradication efforts have become serious. They include tracking dogs and the placement of microchips in receptive females. A stationary female indicates that she is consorting with a male. Using GPS tracking, she is then located and the male is removed. The largest resident alien lizard is the Nile monitor. These fearsome predators will catch and eat anything that moves. Their sense of smell rivals that of a bear. Like baby alligators, they're fun when they are small. But a 5-foot carnivorous lizard with sharp teeth and claws is a handful. Realizing this, some irresponsible owners have released them in the wild. Releasing a predator, especially a large aggressive one, can impact a given wildlife population to the point of extinction. Animals that have not evolved with a predator have no built-in defenses. A flooded forest is called a swamp. Near Ocala, Florida, is a large swamp known as the Ocala National Forest. Along with deer and gators, it's home to a thriving colony of rhesus monkeys from India. Male rhesus weigh up to 20 pounds and can be belligerent, but they are highly respectful of the resident gators, who are quick to chase down any monkey careless enough to fall in the river. The rhesus macaque is famous for its contribution to medical science. Experiments with them produced knowledge of the Rh or rhesus factor in human blood types. Of course, if you're a pregnant rhesus, you're not all that concerned about blood types. Perhaps she should try pickles and ice cream. Her offspring from last year has developed into a first-rate gymnast. These monkeys, contrary to popular belief, were not released here by filmmakers making Tarzan movies in the 1930s. They were turned loose by the former owner of Silver Springs as an added attraction for the tourists. Their impact on nesting birds is significant. They eat eggs and nestlings, but for the most part they are vegetarians and content to eat plant material. The gestation period for a rhesus is about 6 months, and the nursing newborn is closely guarded by its protective mother. This mother has a newborn infant, but she also has a strong attachment for her 1-year-old. Rhesus are very clean and don't have fleas or other external parasites. Instead, they groom to remove old skin and loose hairs. Didn't look that loose to me. Rhesus society is matriarchal, and males are pretty much on their own. Rhesus mothers who haven't yet given birth have an overwhelming urge to touch other infants. They follow new mothers because of hormones that are flooding their bloodstream with a desire to be a mother. We call this the mothering instinct. Living next to a cool spring-fed stream is a gift. But to a chest-clinging infant, it's a bit of a hazard. The macaques aren't the only aliens here. This swamp and most of the rest of Florida has been totally invaded by the Muscovy duck. Muscovies are from Central and South America. They've been domesticated since the 1500s. Most of those in Florida are descendants of escapees. The name Muscovy comes from an early shipping company called the Muscovite Company. They shipped Muscovies to Europe. The Muscovy is a big, flashy duck, but it pales in comparison to the mandarin. The mandarin is a native of Asia and is highly valued by collectors. Many captive birds escape and are frequently seen in the wild. This lone male is obviously in breeding plumage and eager for a receptive hen to find him. He's a close relative of our wood duck. They are both cavity nesters, so that often poses a problem where nesting is limited. It's doubtful that mandarins will ever be as plentiful as Muscovies. Northern Florida rivers are surrounded by live oak forests that are festooned with Spanish moss. These forested glens are home to the native white-tailed deer and, occasionally, India's cheetal or axis deer. It is, without a doubt, one of the world's most beautiful deer. Bucks weigh up to 200 pounds and sport spectacular antlers. This deer, along with the much larger sambar, are two favorite prey species of the Bengal tiger. The presence of the cheetal can perhaps be explained by the nearby presence of a unique barrier island. The closest thing to tiger habitat in Florida is St. Vincent Island off of Apalachicola in Florida's Panhandle. St. Vincent National Wildlife Refuge is a rectangular 5-mile-long island and was once owned by a logging company. The owners brought in several exotics both for hunting and wildlife viewing purposes. Various antelope, zebra, cheetal, and sambar were all released on the island. Most were removed, shot, or, like the cheetal, swam to the mainland. But one has remained and is doing very well, the sambar. Deer flick their ears when they are listening hard. stags are wary to the extreme. That did it. Sambar are big aquatic deer like our moose and weigh up to 600 pounds. The longleaf pines of Apalachicola are beautiful natives and home to the osprey. While the alien casuarinas of Fort Lauderdale are home to several species of exotic parrots. Casuarinas form close tangles that the parrots love to roost in. Orange wings have a touch of yellow on their faces, while the green cheek has a prominent red forehead. The small nande, or black-headed parrot, is from Bolivia in southern Argentina. They have a sharp little call. One of the most highly prized Amazons is the glorious bluefront. The yellownape, as his name indicates, has a spot of yellow on his neck. Most are content to roost on a limb, but a few prefer to sleep indoors. Beneath the casuarinas are the ubiquitous Brazilian peppers, home to a troop of vervet monkeys from South Africa. This scrubland lies between the Fort Lauderdale Airport and the Port Authority. It consists mainly of casuarinas and Brazilian peppers, two alien plants that do well on disturbed soil. The vervets are probably descendants of escapees from a shipment at the nearby docks. The vervet is also called the green monkey and is basically a vegetarian. They love bananas. This big male weighs around 12 pounds and has a family of 4 females back in the bushes. I suspect that vervet has the same root word as verdant, meaning green. Their coat does have a greenish cast to it. They are totally habituated to the air traffic. But me? I'll gladly exchange the roar of jet engines for the quiet of the forest. This is Mayaca State Park near Sarasota. It has a healthy population of feral pigs. Feral refers to a domestic animal that has gone wild. The feral pig is a dilemma for wildlife officials. They deplore what it does to the environment, but at the same time, they know it is vital to the survival of the endangered Florida cougar, or panther. Pigs and deer are at the top of the panther's menu. You'll note that fully half of her face is nose. It is super sensitive, and she follows it diligently. Feral pigs tend to lose the domestic twist in their tails. This piglet has an almost straight tail. Every itch deserves a good scratch. Where pigs are plentiful, ground-nesting birds, snakes, lizards, and rabbits are scarce or non-existent. The pigs look at baby rabbits in their form or nest as a real delicacy. Pigs are omnivorous, like humans, and, like humans, will eat anything that's edible, plant or animal, dead or alive. The pigs left a bit of an avocado. In some areas, the ground looks as though it's been rototilled. The pig is indeed a first-rate excavator. Where the pig roots, the habitat will eventually repair itself. Man's man's disruption of the soil is more permanent. This forest and prairie became a farm and is now destined to be a housing development where very few of the wild residents can live as they once did. Florida has witnessed the introduction of 4 amphibians, 48 reptiles, 196 birds, 102 species of fish, and 31 mammals. Mammal number 32 is man, by far the most destructive alien. Hopefully, we can educate him to be a more thoughtful and considerate steward of the land. He could start by making his own yard more creature-friendly, less grass and more plantings that encourage native wildlife. In Cape Coral, Florida, a major effort is being made to discourage and control yet another aggressive alien. Leading the charge is Bob Mongok, who works for Cape Coral Environmental Resources. Bob has been given the task of eradicating an established population of Nile monitor lizards. These big lizards are opportunistic predators and are a serious threat to a small population of American crocodiles that live in the area. The lizards dig into the crocodile nests and eat the eggs. They also dig up burrowing owl nests to eat both the eggs and young. Bob has engineered large live traps to catch the lizards, who are lured by the opportunity to dine on raw chicken parts. Bob checks his traps on a daily basis. He covers the trap to shade detainees. No luck here. This trap, next to a canal, appears to contain a customer. Bob catches a lot of raccoons and opossums. Once he even caught a family of otters. They all get a free meal and a quick release back to the wild. Bob often receives calls from homeowners when they see a monitor, so his traps find their way to all sorts of habitats. In this case, a flower bed, where this lizard's incredible sense of smell led it to the raw chicken parts. The Nile monitor lizard uses its teeth, claws, and whip-like tail to good effect in subduing prey, but all are ineffectual against the trap. If he could, Bob would gladly ship this alien back to North Africa, but sadly, he can't. He can only destroy it humanely and try to educate the thoughtless people who release them in the wild. His sad duty is tempered with the knowledge that the mother crocodiles and owls will have one less lizard to worry about. It's no accident that the majority of our alien neighbors have found homes near us. Most native animals cannot adapt to such drastic changes in their environment, but a few of the aliens have been able to make the best of a bad situation. We once had a beautiful native parrot called the Carolina parakeet. It was driven to extinction by orchard growers who objected to the damage it did to their fruit trees. That left an open niche, which is slowly being filled by many of the parrots we saw earlier. One large flock arrives each evening to sit on the phone wires in front of the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach. I call this pair the odd couple. The small female is a green cheek from Mexico, and he is a yellow-fronted Amazon. Green cheeks make up the bulk of the flock. Preening is mandatory before going to bed. Some of these hybrids confuse even the best birders and ornithologists. Like the budgies, these parrots are real acrobats. It took a bit of convincing, but she finally submits. The head and neck is the one area they need help with. They are extremely habituated to man's world. Not a single feather flinches as an ambulance roars by. Note how she grabs his leg for assurance. Around 7 p.m., they fly into the nearby casuarinas and roost for the night. Within an hour, they will all have fallen asleep, and even Palm Beach will grow quiet. But not as quiet as Myakka, where the panther hunts at night.